Israel tightens its grip on Gaza as peace talks continue, and France hosts a humanitarian summit. In Gaza, talks are underway to set up a temporary ceasefire. About a dozen hostages are being held by Hamas, and negotiations are underway to secure a three-day humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza in exchange for their release. That's what a Western diplomat and a United Nations official in Egypt said on the condition of anonymity. The deal could allow more aid, including fuel, to enter the besieged territory, as conditions facing the 2.3 million Palestinians trapped there grow increasingly dire. The officials claim that Qatar, Egypt, and the United States are mediating the talks. One official also mentioned that if a deal is reached, the same formula could be used for future freezes and releases. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that any ceasefire must include the release of hostages taken by Hamas on October 7. Israel estimates that the Palestinian militant group kidnapped about 240 people. Much-needed humanitarian aid could enter the Gaza Strip during a three-day ceasefire, and fuel could enter for the first time since the war. Under United Nations oversight, it would be given to medical facilities and bakeries. Since the fighting began, Israel has not allowed any fuel shipments to Gaza, claiming Hamas would use them for military purposes. Only a trickle of aid, including medicine, food, and water, has entered Gaza over the past month. Workers in the aid sector say this is inadequate. According to the officials, under the proposed ceasefire agreement, Hamas would release a dozen civilian hostages, most of whom hold foreign passports, and provide a full list of hostages to the mediators. The hostages would be accessible to the International Committee of the Red Cross. The diplomat said the talks are complex because of the involvement of different parties in the region and in Western capitals. Israel tightens its grip on the Gaza Strip. As the Israeli military tightens its hold on northern Gaza, thousands of Palestinians are fleeing to the south. They are leaving because they understand that Hamas has lost control of the north and that the situation is more secure in the south, said Israeli army spokesperson Daniel Hagari on Wednesday night. He also said that the evacuation corridor, that had been open for a few hours a day toward the south of Gaza beginning on November 5, would be open once more on Thursday. Gaza has been without power and running water for over a month due to the siege and constant Israeli bombing. Civilians have been hit by Israeli strikes even in the south, where they were ordered by Israel to seek safety. The Israeli army claims that on Wednesday, nearly 50,000 people fled Gaza City. This brings the total number of people who have fled the largest city in the Palestinian enclave to 72,000, as reported by the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA. However, tens of thousands of people are still in a disastrous humanitarian situation in northern Gaza. They have a hard time getting even the bare necessities like water and food, the international organization said. A humanitarian summit for Gaza is being held in France. On Thursday, France will host a humanitarian conference to try to secure aid for Gaza, which has been nearly impossible due to Israel's relentless bombing. French President Emmanuel Macron spoke with Netanyahu on Tuesday and will speak with him again after the summit he initiated fails to attract Israeli participation. On Tuesday, Macron also spoke with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Qatar's Emir, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, both of whose countries are instrumental in getting supplies to the Gaza Strip. However, there will be no top-level Arab representation either. The Palestinian Prime Minister will speak on behalf of the Palestinian Authority. The only crossing between Gaza and the rest of the world that is not under Israeli control will be visited by a ministerial delegation from Egypt. Humanitarian organizations, which have been relentless in their criticism of Israel's devastating strikes, will be keeping a close eye on the conference. One UN official called the situation in Gaza a living nightmare. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, the atrocities committed by Hamas groups on October 7 and the continued holding of hostages, as well as Israel's collective punishment of Palestinian civilians and their forced displacement, constitute war crimes. Standing in front of the Rafah border crossing between Egypt and Gaza on Wednesday, Volker Turk told reporters, "These are the gates to a living nightmare. We have gone over the edge. This," he said later in Egypt's capital of Cairo, "cannot go on any longer." In order to protect civilians and allow desperately needed aid to reach Gaza's beleaguered population, Turk said international human rights and humanitarian law must be respected. According to him, the UN Rights Office has been getting reports in recent days about an unnamed orphanage in northern Gaza housing 300 children who need immediate assistance but cannot get it because communications are down. "We cannot get to them," he sadly proclaimed. "I feel, in my innermost being, the pain, the immense suffering of every person whose loved one has been killed in a kibbutz, in a Palestinian refugee camp, hiding in a building, or as they were fleeing," Turk said. "In order to put an end to this nightmare, we all must feel this shared pain.